Going to do a quick 45 minutes on Kenyan, and then. Are you asking me the same question, or am I still asking you?
What was the question?
I don't remember. It's a great school, you guys. You should all go.
And we're done.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about sort of the role of the creator and like one's responsibility to fans, because like when I started writing Miss Peregrine, I was just a kid in, you know, my pajamas in front of a computer, and I never thought that anyone would see it except for my mom and my editor and like 3 people. And I didn't really think much about the people who would be reading it, and I didn't know it would be 3 books even in the beginning. And so I couldn't really envision this long road that it would go down and all the people who would read it and sort of become, you know, invested in the characters. But that happened slowly over time, and I slowly became aware of all these people who had, like, you know, expectations of these people who I'd created alone on my own. And you've had that, some version of that experience, I think, too. You know, you were cast in the show, and then 8 episodes later, you know, you are the co-creator of this person who I'm sure, you know, people love. And do you feel like, you know, did you grow and develop like a feeling of responsibility toward the fans of the show?
Not so much. I mean, I always felt like I was serving someone else's vision, whereas this is you.
Self-serving.
You know? Well, no, I was a part of a much larger machine, and I felt like I mean, certainly when I was writing and directing my movies, I felt more of that. I mean, certain people, like, it seems like some, like, young people don't, they want liberal arts, the second film I directed, to go a different way at the end. I'm convinced it's the right way it ends. But I know what you mean about people who, you know, you fall in love with, you know, a lot of people were upset about the finale of How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but I always said, you know, a lot of people liked it, a lot of people didn't like it, but what I think it really spoke to was the level of engagement, enthusiasm for the show, and love for the characters. And on some level, it was sad. People would have been sad no matter what, because they didn't want to let it go. But I think that there's, you know, it's an interesting thing about an author's or an artist's creation getting away from them. It's kind of, it just popped in my head like George Lucas, like. People are like, you don't understand the thing you created. You know, we understand it now better than you do.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting. How have you found this playing out in your your books?
It hasn't gotten to any sort of George Lucas stage yet. Where
just wait.
Gonna take it away from me. I don't know. I mean, I think I've been lucky in that I haven't gotten a lot of like, you're ruining the books. You know, mainly I think because. Not until the end of the 3rd book is there a definitive anything. I mean, the first 2 books are cliffhangers. So mostly the reaction to the books has been like, and? You know, so only now are people like, oh, I can weigh in on the arc of the story, you know?
Right.
Which I'm just starting to get reactions to it for the first time, and it's deeply terrifying. But so far so good.
Well, now you have other collaborators coming in and a whole different medium because the film's being made, which I'd love to talk with you about. I was thinking as we were talking earlier about, there's a tweet, I don't know where I read it, but I love it, and someone like was mad because someone cut them off on the freeway. So what they screamed was, I hope your favorite book is made into a film and the characters are nothing like you imagine them to be. It's like, I love that as a curse on someone. Yeah, it's a terrible thing.
That's a sheltered life.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you know, as you obviously have this world you've conjured in your imagination, and then you said you've been to the set 4 days or so, and other people are weighing in, and sometimes it's, you know, just like you imagined, and other times it's not at all like you imagined, and other times it's better than you imagined. So what's that process been like to see this world materialize and form in front of you?
Sort of like a magic trick, because I guess every movie is different, every adaptation of a book is different, but often there's not a lot of conversation or collaboration, and that was true of this too. It's sort of like, Tim Burton, this icon you've sort of worshipped and looked up to for a very long time, is going to adapt your book. And I was like, okay, really? I couldn't really believe it until I finally went to the set and met him and it was happening, and I was like, oh my God, it's real. But it's sort of, when you enter into a situation like that, it's just, you have this sort of, this person, another creative force becomes a co-creator. Yeah. And they're like, well, now I have to, you created that, now I have to take it, internalize it, make it my own, and put it through my own little spaghetti machine in my head, and something else comes out the side. That it's kind of like a game of telephone, you know. It's not you and the book are in my head and then something else comes out. It's like, you know, Tim has to make it his own and become inspired, and, you know, otherwise it's almost like a work for hire.
Yeah.
I really wanted him to make it his own and go with it, and he felt like really personally, you know, connected to the materials somehow, miraculously, you know. No one ever explained that to me, but he was just like, you know, really seemed to connect with Jacob's character in the world, and so, you know, the movie has many similarities and some differences, and that's how adaptations go. And it was very interesting to be there and see it after only having read a script for 2 years of development and not really seen much of, you know, like concept sketches or anything, you know, all of this work happening behind the scenes, to suddenly show up on the set and see Colleen Atwood's costumes on actors who are on a set that's lit and it's happening, just felt like a conjuring trick. Like, here it is, and it was totally overwhelming, actually. We ended up visiting the set 4 times over the course of like 6 months. It was a very long shoot. We started in February of last year, or this year, whoops, and it ended in late July. Late July, and spanned several countries. And so we went to Florida. They were shooting the Florida stuff in Florida, and a studio in London. They had elaborate stages built, and Wales was shot in Cornwall, out in the west of England, on these like misty moors, and Belgium, where Tim went and found Miss Peregrine's house, 5 miles away from the house that I filmed the book trailer at. I don't know if you guys saw the Miss Peregrine book trailer, but I went on this sort of expedition in Belgium to find the perfect abandoned, crumbling house to stand in for the book in my head. And they actually went and like tried to film there, but the owners were weird and it didn't work out or whatever. So they were like, oh, something else just over here down the street works great too. And
it's just a neighborhood of creepy houses.
Belgium is
creepy houseville.
Landscape of creepy falling down houses.
Yeah.
It's an amazing country.
Yeah. From a production design standpoint, it's an amazing country. So I'm curious. I think there's a pitfall with, you know, literature and cinema. There's such different forms, and a lot of times a great book will not always make a good movie because you need to translate it into a cinematic language which is much more visual. However, your book, part of the joy of it, I think, is how visual and cinematic it is. It almost reads, it reads like a book, and there's you know, knock you out sentences all over the place, except you feel like there's this propulsive kind of cinematic quality that we associate with movies a little bit more. And I know you went to film school, so I'm just curious. Like, I also noticed, like, I thought, well, you studied screenwriting because a third of the way through the book, literally a third of the way through the book, is when he emerges out and it's sunny and he's suddenly in like 1940, right? I'm not giving anything away to people, but there's this kind of slam or whatever at the end of the first act, right?
Right.
Do you think in 3-act structures? Like,
totally.
You totally do, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how, beyond that, how your training as a filmmaker has affected you as a novelist.
Well, I think I've always been really motivated by images, to tell stories with images. And even before I went to film school, I was obsessed with photography and movies, but also books. And a film school really instills a discipline in you of like an economy of storytelling. Don't waste a minute, don't waste a breath, and it teaches you how to tell stories with images. What they always tell you in school is, the best screenplay has almost no dialogue, which is never, in reality true, but it's like something you strive for, just to like make a silent film, kind of, with, you know, dialogue dropped in when necessary. Now, Woody Allen didn't follow that dictum and made
Neither does
films.
Josh Radnor.
So that's just, you know, but it's like a way you start learning how to make films,
Yeah.
and then you unlearn, you know, the most rigorous discipline.